It is a beautiful sunny day here in San Diego, and Cosmo has been soaking it in all morning, just hanging out in his favorite chair here on the patio. But I've got stuff to do. We got to do some gardening today, and it's going to be, oh wow, some parrots just flew by. A little bit weird here in San Diego. We have a feral population of parrots that has decided to move in and basically live everywhere. But that is not the topic of today's video. The topic of today's video is what it's like in a random day of doing things in the garden. A lot of times I just show you guys a specific task and I do that, talk about it, teach you about it. But today is going to be one of those days where we're gonna be doing a lot of stuff because there's a lot of random stuff to do in the garden, some of which I don't even know what we're going to cover. I know for sure we're going to be planting blackberries. Yes, blackberries. Last time I planted them, they were right in that spot right there against the fence, and I had to sift the soil, literally all of the soil out to remove those blackberries so they wouldn't take over my garden. We're also going to be planting the first tomatoes of the season. That's very exciting. That's going to be things like my new girls, my glaciers, and those are also going in a raised bed. And we're also going to be looking at starting some more seeds because you can't stop starting seeds at this time of the year. It is too critical. I'll show you guys around the garden. I'll show you how all the seedlings look. Actually, let's do that first. So first, a call out to myself to get myself in gear and build my new compost bin because this is getting out of hand. Right here, this is mostly just nasturtiums, and you'll see plenty of nasturtiums in the garden. So one thing that nasturtiums love is San Diego, and they volunteer and they spread throughout my garden every year, but I still start new seeds. I don't know why. I have a nasturtium problem. But let's get on to the seedlings. Over here, I have this whole tray of broccoli, broccolini, cauliflower, things like that. Some of this will be planted out today. They look really, really, really good. These are in the standard 3-inch 4 cells, not even the deep ones, and they look incredible. This is what happens when you add a little bit of fertilizer every once in a while when you're watering. They will respond and grow like crazy. I also have some horseradish here, which I'm excited for, some yarrow that I need to plant. And this is actually a cutting from my tree collard that I rooted myself. And eventually I'll sneak this into Kevin's garden. I just don't know where. So a couple other miscellaneous stuff here, but let's take a look inside the greenhouse because there is a whole lot going on in there. Into the greenhouse we go, and one day I should give you guys a full tour of what's going on in here, but for now, let's focus on the seedlings. First up is this tray of peppers, which is on a chair. That tray of seedlings is sitting on the very edge of a cement mixing tub, and that's because I've really filled this space out with seedlings. Now up here, I have actually some eggplant, and the reason why I have eggplant that hasn't even started yet is because I forgot to start it. So right now that is sitting on a heat mat to get it boosted as fast as possible. These really shouldn't even be up here since it's on a heat mat, but again, I'm out of space. These are the early tomatoes in question. Now, what I forgot, and I never really, for some reason, remember this, is that early girl and new girl, those tomato varieties are indeterminate. I always think they're determinate, but they're not. So that's what all of these are right here. This selection right here is Moscovich, which is another indeterminate. Now, you might be wondering, why the heck do I have so many? It's a good question. I don't have a good answer. There's no way I could fit all of these tomatoes, especially considering I have all of these tomatoes, which aren't even ready to go in the ground yet. But I digress. What we will be planting today are 2 of these glaciers. They're actually not that grown in. I don't even see roots out the bottom, but I just feel like getting a tomato in the ground now that it's March, and I have the perfect place for it. So we are going to be getting those going. In terms of the rest of what's going on, I have a whole bunch of pepper seedlings, some other stuff that I've potted up like this basil, another sea of pepper seedlings, and with the tomatoes over here, you could really tell that it's time to pot these up by looking at the seedling leaves. So take a look at this. You can see how it's turning a little bit yellow. On the back, it's even turning a little bit purple. That's a nutrient stress. So the reason why this happens is because I jam pack these trays with seeds. Right here, you could see that there's 3 tomatoes in each one. Tomatoes are very nutrient hungry and vigorous plants, so they take up a lot of resources. So all of these need to get individualized and potted up. And actually, let me show you what I mean by individualized, because I think I just made that up. But when I normally start seeds, what I do is I take a tray like this one, and I have 3 separate types of peppers in this. I sow them very densely. Right here, you could see that it looks like 4 of them came up. And then once they're about this size, actually exactly this size, what I'll do is I'll tear them out, rip the seedlings apart, and then individually put them into their own 6 cell. So here's an example. They weren't planted perfectly in the center like this with just one seed and all of them came up. They were split out from a cell like this and given their own space. Now, I put these into 6 cells as backups. The main ones are over here in 4 cells with bigger pots of soil. This is just a 3-inch 4 cell. So all these 2 trays here are the peppers that for sure I want to get into the garden no matter what, which is why they all got their own 4 cell. So they're looking quite nicely. They've already basically doubled in size in like 3 days of just being potted up. So we will be doing some potting up in this video towards probably the end, but I just wanted to give you guys a quick look at these. And let's grab this glacier tomato and get going. So in here, I still have a bunch of seeds out that I need to put away. These are the ones I will be starting later. I'll show you guys exactly what they are. I won't start all of them on camera, but I'll talk about my strategy there. Over here, I have some indoor grown seedlings that are looking pretty decent at this point. Still have some incomplete germination, but they are starting to come through. And what I need to grab right now is some fertilizer for these tomatoes. So I have a big bag of this Bio Alive. Let's go ahead and grab a scoop of that. And beyond that, we're also going to need some trellising. So I'm going to grab 2 sets of these. That'll be perfect for a determinate tomato. Grab the fertilizer and we'll get planting. So before we get into planting this tomato, I have to show you something really cool, which is how to assemble a raised bed using just a brick. So here's a full caveat first. This is a epic gardening bed that we are now selling, but it is one that I'm very excited about because A, it's very affordable. I believe this is going to be shipping for 90 bucks at start, and it doesn't require any tools. Literally, I could use a rock or a hammer. It comes with these 4 pins and 4 boards. Now, I'll show you just how easy it is to assemble and why I was so excited to bring this product on for people to actually get gardening as soon as possible. It's a perfect size raised bed, just enough height that it doesn't take that much soil. All you have to do is line these panels up, just like that. Take your pin, slide it through that first one, and you can really slide it as far as you can. And once it's partially in like that, you're simply going to take something like a hammer, a rock, or a brick, and you're just going to tap that in. And now this is attached. Just like that, it's not going to fall out. It's easy to set up and place in your garden. And I'm gonna go ahead and put the rest of this one together and I'll show you how it works in the actual garden space where I already have one filled with soil. So here we are at the bed where we will be planting these tomatoes. But I want to quickly show you guys this because it's not often that I get that excited about a product that I really want to show you guys how it works. But one of the cool things about this is that the way that the feet are designed here allows you to actually stack these too high. So if you don't want shallow beds in your garden, you want them to have a little bit more height, that is totally something you could do by just going ahead and building 2. So if you see the way that it sets up, the feet lock on the outside. So I can lock it on one side like that. And on this side, I just have to shimmy to make sure they fit around. And just like that, I now have a double tall bed. One thing I've thought about doing with something like this is I could plant potatoes, for example, then add my bed, hill it up with soil and do it that way. But in general, I do like low beds for the aesthetics, but a tall bed is nice when you need it. So I will get this out of the way and we'll get back to just planting these tomatoes. But I'm just really excited to have an option like this that is a little bit more affordable and also just very easy to assemble. So what do we have here? We have our fertilizer, we have our 2 glacier tomatoes, and I have my tomato cages. So the way we're going to set this up is I want to center them on my cage. So what I'm going to do here is grab my cage. I'm going to be putting it near the back of the bed here because I want to maximize my space as much as I can. So I'll go right up to the edge, just like that. That's going to be essentially where I want my tomato. So right here in the center is where I'm going to be planting it. So the second one's going to be right there, nice on the edge, tomato in the center, and now we can plant. So what I'm going to do is, I didn't bring a trowel, so I'm just gonna dig this out with my hand here. We're gonna go to about that 4-inch mark, and then I'm going to go a little bit deeper, and that's what I like to do when I add fertilizer directly to my planting hole, is I like to go past where the seedling's roots actively are. Then I'm going to add half of this scoop here. And remember, this year, I'm doing a lot more fertilizing. Probably saw that in one of my most recent videos where I'm discussing exactly how I fertilize in my garden. And since these aren't fully grown, I would expect them to be about this big if they fully rooted out. What I'm going to do is give the outside of the cell a nice smack to make sure the soil is nice and loose. That way I could just slide these seedlings right out, even though they don't have that much root mass. Just like that. So there we go. Go ahead and plant that. Now, early in the season, what I've decided is I'm not going to be planting my tomatoes deeper. We found in an experiment that we ran at Kevin's garden that early in the season, there's really no advantage to going deep because the soil is simply not warm enough. So by going deep, you might actually even be slowing down your tomato plant counterintuitively. But once you're in like true proper spring, like maybe a month into spring, you could bury those tomatoes deep because the soil will have warmed up a decent amount by then. So same procedure here, dig deep, fert, soil back in there, give it a mix, and then we're going to pop that tomato in. As for the rest of this bed, my thought is I will be doing some lettuces or maybe one of those brassicas that we have back there. And I will be putting a flower in the center to add some nice central beauty. But honestly, I am more and more tempted to put a third tomato in there. But for now, let's get these cages on. And then I actually want to put a cover on this to help it grow even faster. So I'll go grab one of those. So these are the critter covers that we actually use all across my garden to protect from digging raccoons. But they also come with these frost blankets, or you could get them with a frost blanket, that is. And what that does is it provides an extra level of insulation that'll help warm these up even faster and earlier in the season. So I'm gonna go ahead and slip this on, give it a nice snug fit. And I wanna make sure that this is down to the soil level so that no cold air can sneak in and we're simply trapping all that heat. Even though this isn't a fair experiment because I added fertilizer and other stuff, I want to plant one of these unprotected in the middle here with the intention that I will be removing this because I don't want 3 glacier tomatoes in this bed. So let's go ahead and pop that in. We're going to leave that one unprotected, and I'll try to remember to include a little follow-up on a future vlog. But there we have the first tomatoes planted, and I will have a link for this bed down in the description if you guys are curious. But now let's move on to the next task, which is actually to plant some blackberries. Now we need to talk about these blackberries, and we're on the other side of the garden. We're actually outside of the garden on the driveway, which is where these are going to be going. Now, if you're wondering why I decided to get blackberries again after I had to deal with how invasive they were last time, well, that's because my local nursery, Walter Anderson, had a sale on all things Dave Wilson, and this is a Dave Wilson blackberry. So I got it for 50% off. I think each one was still actually pretty expensive at 50% off. They were 20 bucks each, but let me read you the variety and maybe you'll understand why I got it. It's called Blackberry Baby Cakes. It is dwarf. It is thornless. That was a big win for me. I hated dealing with the thorns. It says it's perfect for patio pots and it has a compact habit. So what that means is that it is perfect for growing in a container, and that's exactly what we are going to be doing today. So we need to clear this area out. I have some old stuff here that's just kind of languishing. There's really no reason for it to be here. So I'm going to move that out of the way. I'll show you the containers and what the strategy is. And the containers we're using today are going to be 2 25-gallon grow bags. I often don't reach for these, but whenever I'm growing something perennial, I do want to experiment with them. And I've never actually tried growing in a grow bag for years and years. Like I haven't had a single plant that just lived in that pot for years. So we're going to test it this time with these blackberries. I want to talk about the site selection really quick. You'll notice that, as I mentioned earlier, we're near the driveway here. So that is concrete. Now where these pots are, they're not on concrete. Technically, it's actually dirt. And that's not ideal if you know anything about blackberries. They can break through and spread in your garden, which is why we're going with a container that has a bottom. Now, honestly, I don't think fabric is going to stop blackberries, first of all. I do think that they will be able to push through that at some point, but that's okay. It's really easy to propagate and move blackberries, especially when they are thornless varieties and you could just grab them. So that's kind of my strategy here. I don't have a great other solution in the moment, and I wanted something that was semi-temporary and something that I could move with handles. Now, these will be crazy heavy once I fill it with 25 gallons of soil, but I will still have the ability to pick them up and move them if needed. The other thing is that this grape here will start growing in the summertime. It'll probably start leafing out in about a month or so. So hopefully the blackberries could get a head start. There's plenty of morning light that hits this, but once we get into like 1 o'clock, most of the light has to come through this grape section. So we'll see. I don't know if this is going to be enough light to produce fruit, but I want to try some blackberries and I really cannot think of anywhere else to put them in this moment. So I'm going to go ahead and get these filled with soil. The soil that I have that I'm using today is literally just random soil collected from other random containers that I had laying around the garden. I put in like half a bag of fresh soil just to freshen it up a little bit, but it's nothing special. Blackberries aren't as particular as some of the other berries like blueberries and raspberries. They just need a well-drained, rich soil, which is what this is. So I will probably add a little bit of compost And of course, I do have a huge scoop of fertilizer here. It said that for a container this size, they recommended 12 tablespoons of this organic-based fertilizer. So like I said in a previous video, we're going to be trying to fertilize as recommended and see if we ever hit a limit of adding too much. So I'll show you a quick strategy on how to fill up using a wheelbarrow really quick. So my trick for using a wheelbarrow to fill containers like this is to actually approach it opposite of what you normally would do. You want to go back with the handles like this, then you're going to tilt it. That lets you step on the handle like that, which helps me keep the wheelbarrow down. It's also a much wider, lower, easier dumping into a container. So now all I have to do is use my hands to funnel and guide the soil down into the pot. I have full control instead of just tipping it and hoping that the soil falls where I want it. I could just use my hands and direct it as needed. It's actually insane how much 25 gallons of soil is. Each one of these bags is only half full. So I've got another old container here. Honestly, I will admit, I should have potted this in before filling this back all the way. Now I have to figure out how the heck I'm gonna move all this soil. Give this a couple of good smacks, get it nice and loose. Then you could just grab the whole plant just like that. In we go. There we go. That's a nice height. Now to add half of that fertilizer, mix it in to that top layer, and then we're gonna backfill. Make sure all that fertilizer is covered up. And now we've got the baby cakes blackberry all potted up. I gotta get that last one in. So I'll get that in the ground and then let's go take a look at seedlings. So we are in March and the real true spring is just around the corner. So it is time to start some more seeds. I have shown you my early season starts, things like brassicas, lettuce, all that kind of stuff. Then I showed you the peppers and tomatoes, which are more of the true spring season. Those were started back in February. And now it is time to fill in the gaps. Not entirely. I still have some other things that I haven't started yet, like the cucumbers. I want to wait till it's warmer. But let me just show you what I have here before I ramble on anymore. First off, we are going to be starting some basil. This is a downy mildew resistant version because that is something that my basil suffers from. If you don't know what it is, it's like when your basil gets covered in this fine black powdery stuff on the bottom of the leaf and then the whole plant dies. That's a disease that could live in your soil for years. So I did switch to a resistant variety. Then I'll be starting my squashes, my summer squash. I have Emerald Delight and Chiffon. Both are really reliable ones. I actually haven't tried Chiffon yet, but Emerald Delight is easily one of my favorite standard zucchinis. Other than that, is there anything else special? I have some more dill, some summer savory now that it's getting warmer, some Thai basil, some more broccolini, spinach lettuce from row 7. It's supposed to be a darker variety of lettuce that's healthier for you. A little gem because it's classic and delicious. Then I've got some more kale, a whole bunch of French marigolds. These are going to be the companion plants for my tomatoes because the French marigolds deter root knot nematode. So I have Naughty Marietta, Red Metamorph, Lemon Drop. Then we go into some zinnias like Thumbelina, which is a really tiny, cute zinnia, great for containers or raised beds. Then we got Senora, which has this beautiful color. The dahlias, cactus flowered blend. It's fun to grow dahlias from seed because you literally don't know what you are going to get. It could be totally random. Bright Lights blends, Cosmos, Oriental Night Alyssum. Again, that's going to be another companion plant. Some bachelor buns for extra dark color. I like the darker colored flowers that are purple, and some Diablo Cosmos because you guys probably already figured this out by now, but I am a sucker for orange and yellow flowers in the garden. I will be also starting some sugar snap peas. It's kind of getting to the edge of the season where it might be too hot for them to really thrive, but you will still get a crop of them. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a go. Springtime, you literally have no idea whether it's going to be cold and wet or if it's going to be dry and hot or some combination of it. So in my opinion, your best bet is to start all the things that even are maybe a little bit late, a little bit early, because you don't know how the season's going to hit, especially somewhere like San Diego, which is already so mild. Those little differences can make a huge difference in terms of whether you get any broccoli or not, or whether you planted your tomatoes too early. So I'm always planting and keeping a backup plan. Another thing, this was actually a collection of sweet peas. Now, these are all unique varieties that I have literally never heard of before. I didn't even know they existed. These are from Marin Mathis, who I had on the podcast very recently. She actually sent me her book. It's literally a book all about sweet peas, like history, how to grow them as cut flowers. She's a professional cut flower gardener. And so she sent me some really cool varieties. And I did peruse this and I read for timing on sweet peas. Now, here's what I've figured out. If you are somewhere zone 8 and up, you, like me, you should have really started them in fall or even in the winter time, a little bit earlier than right now, because May is going to either be really hot or really cold, as I mentioned. If it's a cool May, these sweet peas will do absolutely beautifully. I should get a nice set of blooms in that May season. If you live anywhere zone 7 and under, actually right now the springtime is a perfect time to start your sweet peas. You want to do it about 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost, and that will be a great time to start your sweet peas. So for me, I'm living on the edge here. I don't know if I'm gonna actually get anything out of these, but she did send them and I wanna see if I could get some color in the garden. The way I'm going to be starting these, based on her recommendation, is using, well, she didn't recommend our 4-inch 4 cells, but she recommended a 4-inch pot. So I'm going to use the 4 cells that are 4 inches deep, put 3 seeds in each one, and that's how I'm going to start them and transplant them. When you transplant sweet peas, you wanna make sure you have a deep enough soil bank, so that's going to be how I approach that one. And then beyond that, I am starting to think about where I could sneak some beans in. Now these beans, I believe the provider were one that can handle cooler soils, which is great for the early season. That's why I chose this one. The really ideal place for this would be in the greenhouse or in a raised bed that warms up a little bit sooner. So those are the seeds I'm going to be starting. And now let me show you how to deal with seedlings, how to rip them apart and pot them into new containers. So now I'm going to show you how to pot these guys up, how I split them up, why I sow densely, everything like that. Now, you can be very rough with seedlings. I'm going to make that very clear right now because a lot of people think you have to baby them. That's true for peppers or tomatoes or really just about anything unless it says it does not like root disturbance. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look for one of these that has 4 just to make my life easy. So this tomato up front here, it's called Advex. It's from Bulgaria. I have no idea what it's really. It's a new variety to me. So there it is. I have my 4 tomato seedlings in there. It doesn't matter how close they are, how far apart they are. You could take a closer look at that so you could see exactly what we're working with. And here's what I like to do. Now you could just try to pull these apart and that works quite well, but when they're very close together like these 3, what I prefer to do is to loosen up the soil a little bit. So you take your seedling, go like that, just roll it, and you'll see that everything just starts falling apart. So there's 1 tomato, 2 tomato, 3 and 4. Just like that, you've separated out these plants and they are just fine. They even still have some soil attached, which is going to make them transplanting much easier. It's not going to be as stressful, that is. So let me go ahead and grab these. You can see I'm not being careful at all. I'm just swinging them around all over the place. Set those aside. Then we're gonna get some soil. So I have a 3-inch cell here because this is the first pot up. When it comes to tomatoes, I prefer to give myself the option to pot up at least twice. So if I go for something like the 4-inch pot, I'm going to be a little bit more limited on what I could pot into next. Whereas from here, I could go directly into those big 5-inch pots that we carry. So the way I like to do this is I take my empty cell like this, I'll get some soil, and this could just be potting mix. It doesn't have to be sifted. It doesn't have to be fine. These have already germinated, so we don't have to worry about any of that. I don't want it to be that wet at this point because I'll show you exactly why. If it's too wet, it's hard to actually compact it. And I'm not trying to compact, but I think you'll get what I mean in a moment here. So that's one option. You get your nice loose soil. There's no packing whatsoever. Then you take your seedling, just like this, lay it on the surface with your finger on the roots. Now, as your finger hits that root, what you're going to do is start pressing with that finger directly as deep as you can, while this hand is helping push that plant downwards. So finger on the roots, just grab a couple of them, push, just like that. And so what you see is what I've done here is by using that loose soil, I've potted it up to those first seedling leaves, and I've done it very easily. I don't have to like carve out a special hole. At the end, I could go through and backfill that. Now there is the other option. So let me move that aside and show you that. You could start with a cell like this. You could just dangle your seedling and then you could just backfill around it. That's another way to do it. I find that that's not very efficient, especially if you're using something like a 4-cell. The other option is to start by loosely filling the bottom and then compacting it so you have a nice flat surface. Then take your seedling, place it on the very bottom, and then now you could go through and backfill this. Now, when you're doing a lot of tomatoes like me, something like this option with the loose soil that I just press into is my preferred option. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and dig this back out, plant that one. Same with this, plant that one. And then I'll show you, all you have to do now is go back through and backfill this pot. So very simple. Now you just water this. They will grow very quickly because this is essentially 100% new soil. That's one of the advantages of breaking them up instead of using the original soil in here, because this has now lost its nutrients. It's starting to get a little bit stale, and adding all this fresh soil is going to really invigorate these plants. Now with peppers, it's basically the same thing. I'll show you how to do it with a 6-cell because I have a lot of them here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is Sweet Banana from BI. That's one that I'm very excited to try growing. And we're gonna do the exact same thing here. So seedlings, I'll show you the first option, which is you could just start pulling like that. And that works pretty well. There's 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So that again is the other option. The other one that I showed earlier is where you just roll it. So both options, totally great. You don't have to remove the soil. In fact, the more soil that stays attached, I think the better these seedlings will do on the onset. So then you get your container. In this case, I'm gonna go back into a 6-cell because I think that peppers will be fine in this, basically. Peppers don't need as much soil, especially when they're young. It's actually easier to overwater them and make them suffer, basically. Whereas with tomatoes, it's kind of hard to overwater a tomato. I've overwatered a tomato on purpose and it honestly did just fine. So same idea here. You could just do a light fill like so and try to press in. You have a little less soil to work with here. So in this case, having slightly damper soil might be beneficial. Then you could just take your finger, make a hole into that soil, just like that. You could see the little hole there. And then take your seedling like this and just kind of jam it into that hole. So that's another great option. That's how I've done most of my peppers, I think. They just tend to have less roots. I'm not trying to plant them deeply. One of the advantages of pressing it into the soil is I could press that stem in nice and deep. Here, I'm just trying to get these roots in the soil and that's it. I don't need it to go deep. I just want it to be nicely seated so that they stay upright and they start growing as soon as they possibly can. So there you have it, potting up tomatoes, potting up peppers. Now again, you could go directly into a 3-inch 4-cell like this, which is what I've done for a lot of them. But if I'm not sure, or if I have too many plants, then I could just go ahead and use a 6-cell. And this is basically going to give it another 2, maybe 3 weeks easy, where these peppers won't get stunted because they have all this abundant fresh soil to use now. So yeah, peppers, tomatoes, make sure you pot them up. They will grow like crazy when you do, so don't be surprised when you see a sudden boost in vigor. Now, I've got 30 different tomatoes that I have to do this to. I'm not looking forward to it, but it's part of the game. I'm gonna put a podcast on, relax, and just pot myself away. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys learned something along the way. Let me know what you guys are excited to grow right now, and if you're in the potting up stage, or maybe, depending on where you live, you might be just starting your first seeds today.